I never thought I'd be writing this, but here I am. For the last few years, I've been married to Emily, a woman I thought I knew inside and out. Our relationship was never perfect, but it had its good moments. We laughed together, went on trips, and supported each other. At least that's how I saw it. I'm not naive, well, maybe I was, but I had no reason to think things were off. Emily had her quirks, sure, but don't we all? She was the type who always had to be in control, a bit of a perfectionist, but I loved her for it. It wasn't until recently that I started noticing small things I now can't unsee. It started innocently enough. She was coming home later than usual from work, and when she did, she'd be on the phone, talking in whispers. I'd ask about her day, and she'd give me these one-word answers, nothing specific. If I was lucky, she'd ask how mine was. But the more I asked, the more distant she seemed. I chalked it up to her work stress or maybe a new project that was eating up her time. After all, we all go through phases where we get caught up in life and forget to connect with the people around us, right? But then the little things started adding up. One day, I picked up her phone to look at the time, and her texts were open. I saw a message from someone named Jake that made me freeze. There was nothing directly incriminating, but the tone, flirty, playful, made me uncomfortable. I pushed it aside, telling myself that I was being paranoid, that it was nothing. Then came the first real blow. My sister-in-law, Allison, pulled me aside one evening. She's always been close to Emily, so when she told me something in confidence, I wasn't expecting what came next. Allison hesitated at first, but then she just dropped the bomb. I know you've been worried about Emily lately. I've heard from a friend that she's been seeing someone else, a delivery man from the office. I couldn't breathe for a moment. I thought I heard her wrong. A delivery man? My wife, Emily, the woman I married, was having an affair? The words didn't make sense. I wanted to deny it, to tell Allison that it was some sort of misunderstanding. But the look on her face told me she was serious. She was sure. I felt like I was falling into a pit, and everything around me started to blur. Could it be true? Was I really that blind? I had to know more. The doubt in my mind was suffocating. So I did what anyone would do in a situation like this. I called Jake. The name lingered in my head, and I couldn't shake it. I wasn't sure what I was going to say to him, but I had to find out if what Allison told me was true. What I wasn't prepared for was what happened when I dialed that number. When I called Jake, I wasn't sure what to expect. Maybe he'd deny it. Maybe he'd hang up. Maybe he'd confirm everything and crush whatever hope I had left. The phone rang 3 times before he picked up. His voice was casual, like he was used to getting calls at this hour. Hello. I was trying to keep my voice steady, but it came out shaky, like the ground beneath me had just been yanked away. Hey, is this Jake? I asked, swallowing hard. Yeah. Who's this? I hesitated for a second, trying to figure out how to ask him what I needed to know without sounding like a complete mess. I'm Emily's husband, I said. The words tasted like vinegar on my tongue, but I pushed through. I've been hearing some things. I just wanted to know if you could tell me what's going on. There was a pause on the other end. I could hear him shifting around, maybe in his seat or his car, but then he spoke. I'm not sure what you're talking about, man, he said, trying to sound nonchalant, but I could hear the slight nervous edge in his voice. You've got the wrong guy or something. I was furious, but I had to keep it together. Don't play dumb. I know about you and Emily. I heard everything, man. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I just want to know, are you really together? His tone shifted almost immediately, and I could hear him hesitate, like he was considering whether to deny it or come clean. Look, man, I didn't know you were married. She never mentioned you. His voice was low now, almost apologetic. But yeah, we've been hanging out, spending time together. She's been a little distant lately. I thought you knew. I wanted to scream, to throw my phone across the room, but I stood there, frozen in disbelief. Emily, my wife, this wasn't just a stupid fling or a one-night mistake. It was real. And what's worse, she was making excuses for it. I don't know how you can do this to me, I said, my voice cracking, barely keeping my composure. But let me make one thing clear. I will tell her sister what's going on. I'll tell her everything. You think you can get away with this? I'm done being played for a fool. Jake sounded defensive now, maybe realizing how badly he had overstepped. Look, man, I don't want trouble. This isn't about you. It's about her, and she's the one who keeps coming back to me. I felt my blood run cold. What did he mean by that? Emily was coming back to him? Had she been lying to me all this time? Sneaking behind my back? I wanted to break down right there and then, but I had to keep my cool, for whatever was left of my dignity. I don't care if you want trouble or not, I told him, my voice now dead serious. But you're going to regret this. Don't think I won't take action. I hung up before he could say anything else. My hands were shaking, my body was rigid, and all I could do was stand there in stunned silence. The betrayal was like a physical blow, and I could feel every part of me unraveling. What did I do now? What the hell was I supposed to do? The woman I married had been lying to me, had been seeing this guy behind my back, and I had no idea how deep it all went. I couldn't sit on this. I needed to confront Emily, but how could I look her in the eyes? How could I ever trust her again after everything I just learned? I couldn't sit still. I kept pacing the living room, my mind a whirl of thoughts, emotions, and questions. What the hell was I supposed to do? How could Emily, my wife, do this to me? The idea of confronting her made my stomach twist into knots. I knew that whatever came out of my mouth wouldn't be pretty, and I wasn't even sure I could keep it together in front of her. I waited, and it felt like hours, but finally, Emily walked through the front door. She looked normal, just like any other evening, like nothing had changed. She didn't even notice my tense posture or the cold silence that hung in the air. As she kicked off her shoes, she gave me a smile. It was fake, I could tell. "Hey, babe," she said, her voice light. "How was your day?" I didn't respond right away. Instead, I just stared at her, my mind spinning. How could she be so calm? How could she pretend like everything was fine after what I had just learned? "Sit down," I said, trying to control the tremor in my voice. She raised an eyebrow, but she did as I asked, sitting across from me on the couch. Her eyes flicked toward me, like she was sensing something was off. "Emily," I began, my voice almost unrecognizable to my own ears. "You're having an affair with Jake, the delivery guy." Her face didn't register shock or guilt. Instead, she just looked at me for a long moment, almost bored, as if I were just another inconvenience in her day. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said flatly, crossing her arms over her chest. Her defensive posture made me feel like I was the one who was crazy. "You don't know what I'm talking about?" I snapped, standing up and pacing again. "I just talked to him, Emily. I know what's going on. How could you do this to me? How could you be with him? You've been lying to me for months." Her eyes flashed with irritation. "Are you really going to do this now? Seriously?" She scoffed, clearly annoyed at being confronted. "I told you, there's nothing going on with Jake. You're being paranoid. Maybe you should trust me more." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was lying so blatantly, and not even a hint of remorse. Was she really going to sit there and act like I was the one at fault for catching her? The audacity, the nerve. "Trust you? Trust you after I found out that you've been sneaking around behind my back with him?" I shouted. "Don't lie to me, Emily. I'm not some idiot. You're pregnant, aren't you? You've been playing me for a fool, and I know it." Her face went pale, and I saw a flicker of panic in her eyes, but it quickly vanished, replaced by that familiar mask of indifference. She didn't say anything for a moment, but the silence felt heavier than 1,000 words. Then she spoke, her voice smooth, too smooth. "What do you want me to say, Matt? I've been trying to figure out how to tell you, but you're never around. You never make me feel important anymore. And Jake, he makes me feel wanted. You wouldn't understand." The words hit me like a slap. The way she said them, so casually, like I was just some inconvenience in her life, was enough to shatter whatever was left of my faith in her. I was speechless. Her betrayal was bad enough, but her excuses made it 10 times worse. She didn't even try to hide it. "You don't get to blame me for your mistakes, Emily," I said, my voice dangerously low. "You've been having an affair behind my back, and now you're acting like I'm the one at fault? You're unbelievable." She rolled her eyes, her voice dripping with contempt. "Oh, please, you've been so boring lately. All you do is work and complain. Jake actually listens to me. He's not like you. He cares about me." That was the last straw. I'd had enough. This wasn't just an affair. This was her flat-out disrespecting me, treating me like I was nothing, and throwing everything we'd built in my face. I wasn't going to sit here and let her twist the knife. "I'm done, Emily," I said, the words almost surprising me as they left my lips. "You've ruined this, and I'm not going to play your games anymore." But Emily wasn't done. No, she wasn't done being a scoundrel. She stood up, too, her eyes flashing with a mixture of anger and something darker. "You think I'm just going to let you walk away from me like this? You really think you can just throw me out like trash, after everything I've done for you?" She was pushing every button, testing how far she could go. I felt my blood boiling. But in that moment, I realized something. I didn't need to beg for her to stay. I didn't need to fight for a woman who didn't care about me anymore. I wasn't going to fight for her anymore. Not after what she'd done. Not after the lies, the deceit, and the complete lack of respect. I knew I had to take action. There was only one thing left to do. It wasn't about getting revenge on her, at least not directly, but there was someone who needed to know the truth. Someone who might not have known the full story. Someone who deserved to know what was really going on behind their back. And maybe, just maybe, that would be the final blow to Emily's little world of lies. I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to make sure Jake understood exactly what he'd gotten himself into. I could feel the weight of the world on my shoulders as I walked out of the house. Emily's voice was still echoing in my mind. Her insults, her complete lack of empathy. She didn't care about me. She cared about herself, about her own desires, about the excitement Jake brought into her life. But what about me? What about everything we had built? All those years, the memories, the future I thought we'd share? Gone in an instant. I didn't know where I was going at first. I just had to get out. My mind was a tornado of anger, sadness, and confusion. I couldn't think straight. I'd been betrayed in the most unimaginable way by the person I trusted the most. And I didn't even know how to feel. Part of me wanted to scream, to collapse in on myself. Another part wanted to go back to Emily, to beg her to explain, to tell me that it wasn't really happening, that I was overreacting. But I knew better. There was no explanation that would make this okay. She didn't love me anymore, and that was the hardest pill to swallow. The next few days were a blur. I avoided Emily as much as possible, staying out late and spending time with friends who had no idea what was going on. I couldn't look anyone in the eye, not even my closest friends. They didn't know the truth, and I couldn't bring myself to tell them. Not yet. I wasn't ready to talk about it. I needed time to process what had happened, to figure out where I stood. But one thing I did know, I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I didn't know what revenge would look like, but I knew I had to do something. Jake needed to know the truth. He needed to know what kind of woman he was messing with. Maybe I was angry, maybe I was hurt, but I wasn't about to let them laugh at me behind my back while I sat around feeling sorry for myself. The problem was, Emily had already gone to great lengths to keep Jake away from any consequences. They had their own little world, one where I didn't belong. But I wasn't going to just roll over and let her get away with destroying everything we'd built. I wasn't going to let her have everything she wanted while I was left in the dust. I made the decision. I would make Jake feel the full weight of his actions. He wouldn't just get to walk away from this unscathed, no matter how sorry or apologetic he tried to be. Emily had betrayed me, but Jake was complicit. He had chosen to be a part of this mess, and now he was going to face the consequences. It was time to take action. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't just tell Emily's sister about the affair. That wasn't enough. She needed to know more than just the basic facts. I would make sure everyone involved knew exactly who Emily really was. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number for Emily's sister, Allison. She was the only person who had the guts to tell me the truth, and now it was time to share everything. I didn't care how Emily would react. At this point, I couldn't care less about how she felt. I had to make sure someone else knew the truth. Allison picked up on the first ring. "Hey, Matt, what's up?" I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Allison, I need to talk to you. It's about Emily and Jake." The line was quiet for a moment. "What about them?" she asked, her voice soft. "I know about the affair. I know everything," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "I'm not just telling you this for your information, Allison. I'm telling you because you need to know who your sister really is. I'm not the only one she's been lying to." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Wait, what? What are you talking about?" "I'm going to show you everything. I'm going to make sure Jake knows what he's gotten himself into. You need to know the truth about Emily before she hurts anyone else." She didn't say anything at first, and I could feel the tension building in the silence. "Okay," she finally said, her voice filled with a quiet resolve. "Tell me everything." I took a deep breath and began to explain everything. How I found out, how Emily had lied to me over and over again, how Jake had been part of her little game. I told her about the texts, the late-night phone calls, everything I could think of. By the time I was finished, I felt drained, like a weight had been lifted, but I also knew there was no going back. "Matt, I don't know what to say," Allison said, her voice small. "I had no idea. This is really messed up." I could tell she was struggling with the weight of what I was telling her. But I wasn't concerned with her reaction anymore. I was done with Emily's lies, and I wasn't going to let this slide. "Just let her know that I'm done. I'm taking control of my life back," I said. "And Jake? He'll never be the same after this. He'll learn that there are consequences for being part of this mess." Allison didn't argue. Instead, she agreed to help me spread the word, to make sure Emily's actions were exposed to everyone who needed to know. If Emily was going to be this reckless with my life, then she'd have to face the consequences, no matter how many people she tried to manipulate. The plan was in motion now. The pieces were falling into place. There was no turning back. I didn't sleep much in the days that followed. My mind wouldn't shut off, the thoughts of Emily, Jake, and everything they'd done to me running in endless loops. The betrayal, the lies, the cold indifference. It all gnawed at me, making my chest tighten every time I thought about it. I had no idea how I'd let myself become so blinded, so trusting, that I never saw it coming. But it was all out in the open now. The truth had been spoken, and the consequences were just beginning. Emily's reaction when I told her I'd spoken to her sister was predictably dramatic. She stormed around the house, yelling, accusing me of ruining her life, calling me insane for trying to expose her. But I wasn't scared of her tantrums anymore. I wasn't afraid of her playing the victim or pretending she was the one who'd been wronged. This was her doing, her choices, and it was about time she faced the fallout. And fall it did. Allison, true to her word, helped spread the word about Emily's affair. She didn't waste any time. She told everyone. Friends, family, anyone who might listen. It wasn't about getting revenge on Emily. It was about exposing the truth, about making sure no one else fell for her lies. And when Emily realized that the walls were closing in, she went ballistic. The first sign of the fallout came when Jake tried to call me. I didn't answer at first, but when I saw his name flash on my phone, I decided to pick up. His voice was shaky, apologetic, and I couldn't help but feel a little satisfaction at hearing him squirm. "Matt, man, I don't know what to say," he started, sounding like he was in damage control mode. "I never meant to hurt you, man. I didn't know you two were, like that. I just thought." "You thought what?" I cut him off, my tone icy. "That you could just mess around with my wife and not face any consequences? You knew what you were doing, Jake. Don't try to pretend like you didn't." There was a long pause, and I could hear him take a deep breath. "I didn't know she was," I mean, I didn't know it was this serious between you two. She never said anything, man. I thought. You didn't think. That's your problem. I could feel the anger surging again, but I kept my voice steady. You're going to learn something today, Jake. You don't get to mess around with people's lives like this and walk away without consequences. I didn't mean to cause trouble, Jake said, his voice now more defensive. Look, I'm sorry, man. I never wanted to hurt you.